there will come a point in life where we'll look back at this and say, what the hell was that? Because one, I'm doing this solo. Where's Cassie? Two, this is the first episode of Live to Tell. First of all, I have to say thank you to everyone that has worked tirelessly. That's not even a word. Where's Cassie to correct me? I hope she's watching at home. To get us to this point. For many of you, you've watched The Eight. Before that, it was called The Weekly Sizzle. And now we are Live to Tell. Why? Live to Tell is going to be a journey that's more specific to entrepreneurs than directly into franchising. While we still are going to be franchise focused for the time being, the shift is going to continue to happen as you see some other things appear, like Mainland, which we'll get into in future episodes. We also wanted to advance the delivery of our content. We felt that as a content group, we better be really, really good at walking the talk that we're telling our brands to do. Therefore, we have decided to make this epic shift that when we said the 8 was dead, it is dead. We are now Live to Tell. Let's jump into things. All right, here we go. Now again, I already apologize because Cassie's not here, but let's talk about Fantastic. You'll notice that Fantastic has been put to sleep as well. All right, as more and more data reveals, consumers increasingly prefer food delivery to its alternatives. Blaze Pizza is responding with a menu adjustment. The Los Angeles-based pizza chain has added a 14-inch pizza option to its menu, becoming the latest brand to test larger pizzas in an effort to boost delivery sales by emphasizing a shareable option. When is more pizza ever anything less than fantastic? While I like the idea, I think it's smart that brands are trying to jump on the trends of delivery. The reality is that what the fast casual brands have always been accused of is that their product does not carry well outside of restaurants. So you can see this now, those of you who have ordered through Grubhub or Uber Eats. The quality of food slowly decreases the farther it gets away from the restaurant and the farther it gets away from the stove. So when you make the pizza bigger, and I'm not a professional chef. If you read my column about me spilling hot water on my foot, you'll know that I am not a genius when it comes to cooking. But logic would say something that's larger is going to hold less time. So while Blaze is trying to be on the forefront of what delivery is trying to tell us and our consumers to do, I would be a little bit worried that the quality of product is going to be sacrificed in this. So if they're trying to find ways to raise money or drive sales for their franchisees, again, I appreciate it. But I don't know that it's going to work long term because the quality is going to be sacrificed. Interesting story, though. Our celebrity this week, NBA star Kawhi Leonard. I will not try to do his laugh, but it's like, ha 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 ha. I just said I wasn't going to do it. Go watch the YouTube video. Just Google Kawhi Leonard laugh. But he's notorious for keeping quiet. You'd think that would make him pretty hard to market, right? New Balance was charged with the task after Leonard signed a lucrative sneaker deal with the brand and rose to the challenge by embracing Leonard's silent but deadly demeanor. That laugh is not that silent. In a new commercial that debuted during the NBA All-Star Weekend, the commercial has no sound and instead includes a series of texts that directs the viewer to focus on talent over Twitter presence. Kawhi doesn't need your attention, the commercial reads. He already has it. Game speaks for itself. Cool. I mean, I like Kawhi Leonard. He's a hell of a basketball player. But isn't that a little bit like the Andy Kaufman commercial? So I guess, they say imitation is the best form of flattery. So maybe New Balance's ad agency has an office next door to the one that created the one for Burger King. Good point. The other issue I think with New Balance is while the NBA is large, the general audience of those that watch commercials is wide. So it's hard to really focus in on an exact demographic when you're doing commercial ad buys. I do think there are companies like DirecTV I've seen, or Comcast, where now what they're doing is at the bottom of the screen, I'm sure some of you have seen this, you can actually click OK and more information can come your way. Now that's traditionally sent through snail mail, so I don't know that it's caught up completely. But when advertising and demographics hit the same side, they'll have a shot to win. Next, cash money. Instagram users will be able to put their cash money toward a good cause thanks to a new donation sticker that is reportedly debuting on the app later this week. The feature mirrors Facebook's fundraising tool that has raised over $1 billion for charitable organizations and personal causes since its launch. All right, well, not a huge shock here since the owner of Instagram is Facebook. Cause-related marketing seems to work well. And even sometimes when it's poking fun at someone, it seems to work. So you would expect this. Instagram and Facebook are going to continue to play off of each other. The technology is going to do pretty much the same thing. So you can look at it from an advertiser standpoint, and we're using a lot of it with 1851, that depending on what demographic we're trying to reach, we'll use both platforms. So you'll see it continuously follow one another, separate teams, but owned by the same company. Forward thinking. Restaurant brands looking to better serve customer demands while also increasing back-of-house efficiency had a host of beverage equipment options to explore at the annual NAFEM show earlier this month. One of the coolest products on display was the bottoms-up automatic beer pouring system that fills pints and pitchers of beer from the bottom of the glass using a magnet. Well, the system has been around for almost a decade. Brands like Taco Bell and Pizza Hut are starting to use this equipment as a means of reducing waste and giving employees more flexibility behind the counter. All right, technology's been around for a while. Call it some sort of marketing stunt to get people to want to pay attention to whatever technology was out there. But I think what is smart is the evolution of food waste. I think this is going to continue to be a topic that the news media and humans and consumers are going to want to address. Why are we wasting so much product at restaurant brands? So I think that's the better story here. So, okay, now you're using a technology that's been around for a while to eliminate waste. That makes sense. Good story. Forward thinking. Friend or foe? I wish my friend Cassie was here because I'm just talking to a blank screen, hoping that someone out there is watching me as I cut through this first version of Live to Tell. But friend or foe, the U.S. Department of Labor has officially rescinded the 80-20 rule after announcing plans to revise the law late last year. Since 2009, restaurants have been prohibited from paying employees sub-minimum wage for non-tipped work like cleaning. As of last week, the federal government will no longer prohibit food service employees from paying their employees a tipped wage for performing duties. So it's an interesting story. Look, the reality is there are so many shifts happening in the labor market. I just wish the government would just get consistent on what this means. I do think there's still a gap in government officials understanding how small business works. Those that have been in small business or have owned a small business probably have a different point of view. But obviously in a government, there's balance. So there's one side that believes one thing and another side that believes the other. I don't know if I'm going to call this a friend or foe. I'm going to call it probably a little bit of both. And now our quote. With any brand, older ones especially, there are long lists of priorities and challenges. If you're able to rank and concentrate on those priorities, you'd have more success. For us, we worked with a leadership coach who helped us determine our core brand focus and values. By identifying these driving factors at the heart of our business, we've been able to find better ways to embed them throughout our system. That's Hungry Howie's CEO, Steve Jackson. I love that quote. It seems like he is taking the right approach to listening and applying back to his brand. We've had some coverage stories on the 1851franchise.com site for those of you who are looking for more into where Steve Jackson is talking about that. All right, here we go. Heating up. This week, I wrote a column about prioritizing the royalties over selling franchises, and specifically for the franchise industry. I wish this would happen more often. Far too often, the way that a brand goal or a franchise sales goal is created is it's almost like you spin that globe and you let your finger drag along it and ding, that's where we're going to develop. It's ideas or concepts or KPIs pulled out of the sky. I wish that executives in franchising would take a more holistic approach to the way that they're evaluating their businesses and setting the goals that their development team has to hit. And again, it happens way too much that the franchise sales team is tasked with going to sell franchises versus the thing that will make most money for the franchisor, which would be royalties. I can say across the board, across the franchise industry, we're talking about the wrong thing. We're talking about how much does it cost the market to get the cost of a sale? Well, the reality is we should be looking at return of investment or return on investment on the franchisees that join our system. We worked with a brand that I would say arguably makes about $1 million per franchisee over the life of their agreement. So call it a 10-year agreement. So $1 million, and their total that they want to spend per deal is around $25,000. So the question, and I've asked this many times, how much would you be willing to get that million? How much would you be willing to spend to get that $1 million? And the reality is, if you ask me that, if you put the check right in front of me and said, "Here's $1 million, Nick," what would I give you? I would give you $900,000. I mean, I would still make 100. So that seems good. Or if you want to go to the 1-to-3 ratio, then $333,000 is what I would give you in order to get the return. So it's interesting because all these brands are fighting for these numbers, these sales numbers, and I get it for trying to create growth. We've been trained as human beings that if you're not growing, you're dying. But again, I wish the industry would take a step back, say, let's focus on the holistic approach to the business. Let's evaluate how franchise development applied to entire business ends up making it grow. And then now the pressures that are put on franchise sales folks are more on growing the value of the business than getting individuals in. The other thing that seems to happen is when you're paying the franchise sales folks bonus to get these deals done, they're motivated to get deals done and not find the right people. For me, I would rather our franchise sales team be incentivized to go out there and find the franchisees that are going to bring in $1 million than those that are going to bring in 500. But I might be in the minority with this, but I think it's worth a discussion. And to close this out, or to pause, we're now going to move into Life Drive Success, coming up after the break. So our next section, or our next segment, is called Life Drive Success. A few things that I want to say or frame up as we dive into our first conversation here. One is call this section Driven by a book that I wrote that comes out on March 5th, published by Inc. magazine, that everybody that finds success in life has some sort of moment, some sort of struggle that ends up being the chip on their shoulder that pushes them forward. The equation that I talk about in the book is momentum, or foundation plus momentum equals velocity. And I believe that everybody has this within their story, within their DNA. Today we're going to talk with Scott Thompson, who, truth be told, is one of my closest friends. And I wanted to have Scott on today because of people. If you told me to think about people in my life that have gone through challenges or being told they weren't good enough at something to come out on the other side and find success, I would put Scott in that group of people. So Scott, thanks for taking some time to talk with us today.
Hey man, appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thanks for the nice introduction.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, you're wearing the hat and the shirt. You are Mr. Brand.
Yeah.
Tell us about the gig that you're at now. Just give us a glimpse so that our audience knows who you are.
Yeah. So I'm a Chief Development Officer for Big Blue Swim School. We're a dedicated swim school based in Chicago. We've got 5 corporate-owned locations there. We also have an additional 36 locations opening throughout the U.S. Denver, Salt Lake City, Atlanta, Washington, D.C., and also Chicago. So we primarily focus on kids 0 to 9 and learn to swim is our primary focus, but we also have swimming as an activity. And it's a great brand. I also work on the capital side with L5 Capital, where we're the largest stakeholder in the Big Blue brand.
Love it. All right. So before we even get to this point, before we get to Big Blue, I know your life story, but as I say, everybody that has found success in life has had to battle through something. Tell me about your battles.
Yeah, all the way back from early days as a kid. I grew up in a city called Brockton, Massachusetts. It's a city in kind of south of Boston. About 1 million population, and it's pretty diverse. Growing up, didn't have a father figure in my life, just mom. And 9 years later, I had a sister. There were definitely some personal struggles along the way, as far as just making sure we didn't become homeless, and that's truly honest. And I always like to say that I was parentified, meaning that at 9 years old, I was changing diapers and making sure my sister was okay, and mom could balance her checkbook and had enough money to pay rent. So I think my first job was a paper route, and I just basically started that paper route and added like 3 additional paper routes because nobody else wanted to do the job, so I took on that job. And then my first real job at 16 was at Wendy's, actually, and I started to toast buns there and learned how their bun toasting process. And then from there, I ended up on the grill, and then a year later, ended up running the restaurant. So that's kind of probably my first touch into franchising, where I learned process and how to manage people and so forth.
Now, the truth is, though, you get into franchising, and it's not like people instantly believed in you. I mean, you and I have talked about this, that it's taken a while for them to see your potential. Why do you think that is?
Early on, I was a franchisee first, right? I kind of took the reverse route that most folks take. I started as an entrepreneur and had a passion for fitness and bought a few locations in Massachusetts, and had great success there. But I don't think that success translated over into the franchisor side of the corporate realm. And so I was told by many people, and actually was laid off at points when they didn't think I was good enough to do that job. So once I was a master franchisee in New York and I sold back to the private equity group that bought the company, they didn't believe I had the skills to run a region and so forth. And so within a year later, I was laid off, and I had to kind of figure out. But I didn't. One of the things I really focused on is I loved franchising. So I believed in the model of franchising and how it can truly take someone from poverty to prosperity. And as long as you have the work ethic and the desire to be successful. And so I kept educating myself through the IFA and getting my CFE, and then ultimately took a position with this company out of France called Powills, moved my family to Atlanta and from New York, and really challenged myself in a completely different industry to develop a franchise program with a French company, and translating manuals and putting together technologies and putting together FTD. I truly learned what it takes to be a successful franchisor. And then from there, was recruited by premium franchise brands. And I think that's where I learned a lot of the kind of the key corporate skills and board meetings and things, and how to really meet budgets and develop teams and so forth. And but again, still striving to be the best Scott Thompson. And one of the things I've always done is continuously learn and learn from others, but also reading books. I'm going to read your book once I get a copy of it. Hopefully it's signed.
Maybe.
And I'll pay for it. Don't worry.
Good.
But I really believe that I'm never learning. I have a real love for learning. And early on as a kid, I didn't. I was afraid of learning. I didn't want to feel stupid. And so today I learn from my team members. I learn from other franchisors. So I think it's that desire and love to learn that has really propelled me as well. And,
right,
and grit.
Stick with this for a second.
Sure.
You're basically fighting off whether you're going to be homeless or not. And then, you've been laid off from a job or told that you're not good enough in one of your previous jobs. You have to have some sort of chip on the shoulder that's motivating you to prove it to everybody, whether it's the Scott that's a child that I'm going to make it in life, or it's a former boss who said, we don't need Scott on our team. He's not good enough. What is the value of that chip on your shoulder?
I think it's just an internal burning desire to seek. I honestly think it's the is proving people wrong and like making sure that I gain their approval. One of my biggest strengths is if I'll go into a company and I'll be a steamroller and push people to their limits, and people will hate me at first, but at the end, a lot of people when I end up exiting or moving on will truly value that experience and working with me and believing in me. I mean, when I left, for instance, Tutor Doctor as their senior VP of Global, I mean, there were people that called me and said, you know what, I was wrong. You challenged me. You changed me. I'm a better human being because I got to work with you. And so every day I get up, the biggest thing is, if you go back to the fear, being homeless and being poor and having the experience of walking to a Cumberland Farms with food stamps and having to buy milk and seeing your friends at the front desk buying candy, and you're hiding behind in the back there, trying to make sure they don't see you because you don't want them seeing that you have food stamps because you get made fun of. And so I made sure that that would never happen for me and for my family by people. I just outwork people. That's just what it comes down to. I at this point though in my career, and rather than working harder and on myself and in the actual job, I'm actually working harder on developing other people, because I think the only way I'm going to be more successful than I am today is by the other people that I show how great they are and expose their beautiful, unique self and how they can actually thrive in the role that they're in.
You know what I've always loved this about you, that one of the things you just said was there were people that may have not liked you or believed in you at a previous stop, yet you still have this belief in treating people well. Don't you ever just want to go back to those people and say, F you, this was me the whole time. You just didn't give me a shot?
No, because I think you get misunderstood, and everyone has a part to play in a relationship, and maybe at that time I didn't have the confidence or the maturity to speak to someone in a way that got the results that I was looking for. So I think as I've gone through my career, I start to realize how important it is how I approach people and understand where they're coming from first, before I just start throwing up on someone as to what I want and how I want it. And if you don't give it to me, I'm going to stomp like a baby.
So another thing or characteristic that I know about you is you are impatient.
Sure.
And really the journey that you just spoke about is really a patient journey. Do Do you ever reflect back and say, hey, I wish I could have told Scott 5 years ago that there's purpose to what you're doing. There's purpose to the shit that you're having to deal with, that eventually it's going to make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I wish I could go back in time and actually do that, where I could reflect on where I'm at in the process, and from there, say, hey, Scott, you need to go through this to get to where you're going. Never lose focus on where you're going. Do this job and be grateful for what you're doing, and know that this experience will improve you. I think that's the biggest thing that I've where I am now in my career is I don't let moments define me. They're not finite. I try to take a step back and reflect and know that this too will change, or this too will pass. And with that passing, it'll make Scott a better human being for going through it.
How do you take bad days? How do you, someone still gives you a disapproving look, or says something to you that rubs you the wrong way. How do you respond to bad days?
Today, 20 years ago, Scott would have, held on to it, held a grudge, been angry, been vindictive. I try to take the loyalist principles from the Loyalist Team book that I've recently read. It's a great book if you haven't read it yet, by Linda Adams. But I always assume that someone's intent is not malicious, and that there's trust and candor and authenticity there, and that if I have a bad day, which we all have bad days, I still get to get up in the morning and love what I do, and again help people find their dreams and own a small business, and build wealth for their families. But I just hug my son. My son Miles and my wife Elena. There's nothing, with having them in my life, there's nothing else that can really put me really down, to be honest.
Yeah. I'm glad you went there. So this morning, I don't know if you saw what I put on LinkedIn, but
I did not. No.
Okay, so I posted a picture of my family, because I'm looking on LinkedIn, and it's always all the content is buy my brand. Look how great I am. Look what I've done in my career. And I'm like, man, the reality is there's so much personal to what drives us to have success in business, whether it's that pain of knowing what it's like to not have a lot of money as a child, or then the pleasure of knowing that after a bad day you get to go home and get a hug from your son. I mean, so I posted a picture of my family because I was like, without that, then I don't really know the purpose of busting my ass for the grumpy clients that we have to deal with on a daily basis. But it's like, at some point you have to open up on the personal side, and that merger has to happen, that it should be it should not be black and white. It should be gray area, because what drives us in business most likely lives deep within us on a personal basis.
100%. One of the things I do with my team is I want to understand, what are your goals? Where is your path? What is your dream job? Where do you want to be in 5 years, 10 years? Now, a lot of them, some people don't have that ability to see that far in the future, but I still want to understand what their passions are, and what their values are, and what drives them every day. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to truly motivate someone to be successful in their role, whatever role they have within the company. And I also try to weave that into, here are our objectives as a company, and this is how your personal impact drives that ultimate objective, and how important you are to that process of us being successful.
Do you think you do that because others didn't necessarily do that to you, that you have this quality of wanting to know someone on a deeper level, because then you understand their drive, and that maybe it doesn't matter what stop in your career it was at, but at some point someone didn't give you that same respect, that motivates you to give that to people today?
Yeah, they were very, I've had maybe, I would say Chris Kenny, who's on my team now, he has 100%. He's big into that, as far as helping people achieve their lifelong goals, and he's done it already with bunch of people on his team. I haven't had that many people that do that with me in my career. I mean, I could maybe count one or two people that actually cared about where I'm going. Bruce Patz is a great example of that. He was one of my partners in New York, and he's always been excited about my journey and knew that I'd be somewhere great someday. And he was always supportive in that. But yeah, there's been very minimal people, honestly, that from a management perspective that actually took that true personal interest to help.
I think it's important to say that your current situation, you feel like the CEO of the company is engaged in trying to make or help guide you to a better life. And what he looks at is the collective of a whole of everybody plays a part in achieving that. And there's a few other individuals that I've come across in my life. Kevin Wilson, who I talk about frequently, when he gets involved with or starts Buzz Franchise Brands, he's doing the same thing. He's saying, how can I make a difference in the lives of my team? I aspire to do that. Our business is not large enough to have that moment, but I would imagine some of the most successful CEOs are those that take personal interest in their teams, which ultimately, if you feel like someone's got your back on a personal standpoint and there's true trust, then they're going to be motivated to do great things for your company. Yet there's so many dickhead CEOs that manage with an iron fist and are like, get me my damn numbers, go do that. And they don't manage with the people or with the personal involved. And to get there, I think you have to be willing to let down your guard. You got to be willing to let people into your life. But so many people are so reserved for that for some reason. Maybe it's because they never addressed the fact that they were bullied as a kid, or that they grew up with no money, or they don't have an understanding of what people in their communities are going through. But the situation you just talked about, I feel like that is a driver of amazing business is when you take personal interest in your team, and what their ultimate success is going to be.
Yeah. No, at the end of the day, you're only as successful as your best person or your weakest link on your team. And if everyone's like, frustrated and, because, all you continually do is be critical or come down with an iron hammer, I mean, you only get so much out of people, and then people will always be looking for their next opportunity. They'll just be punching in, punching out, and they're not going to really take a personal commitment. And I think trust is built that way. Relationships and trust is built on that that foundation of understanding someone and what drives them. And once you have trust, then you have you don't have that fear of conflict. I think a lot of CEOs, if they're managed with an iron fist, people are afraid to have healthy conflict. And when you don't have healthy conflict, you just have a bunch of yes people who tell you what you want to hear, and it really affects the overall success of the company, because then you have lack of commitment to the goals and avoidance of accountability and inattention to results. I'm sure you've all read the book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and those are the things that truly happen. I've watched it happen in many organizations. If there's not a true level of trust and candor and authenticity across the organization.
Yeah, and I think there's some vulnerability that comes from a CEO that's willing to do it. It will never be perfect, but those.
No, we all have egos.
Yeah.
Egos egos have to be set aside when you have that level of vulnerability, and it does take a minute, some time to, look in the mirror in the morning and say, you know what, I'm in this role, but it's not because of 100% of me. It's the people around me, and I need to recognize that on a daily basis.
Dude, I've always been impressed with your ability to have a positive outlook on life. I don't know that there's any in this crazy life that we live. I don't know that there's any clearly defined blueprint that says you do this and you get X, that the good guys ultimately win. But I'm proud of where you've got to, where now you're in a place where your happiness is much higher. People around you respect you, and you have an opportunity to do some really cool things with a brand that has a lot of potential.
And we get to do big things in every community we get to go in. It all starts with a kid and building their confidence, and we inspire big moments in these kids' lives. Swimming is one of those things that a child has to do on their own, right? Their parents really can't help them learn to swim unless it's really bad. And that we provide an exceptional experience where a kid can really overcome that fear and then ultimately build the confidence to where they can do anything in life outside of the pool. So we unlock the potential of that child, through swimming. That's
first
fun.
of all, you are a constant salesman. So good job there. And secondly, I feel like the Scott Thompson story is the metaphor of teaching someone to swim. I think someone finally believed in you and taught you how to swim, and that's great. When you look back, when you're 80 years old, and I'm 70 years old because of the age difference, you're gonna look back and you're gonna say, "Man, that was cool that the right CEO believed in me, and took all of my bumps and bruises and said, 'Go ahead, Scott, you can do this. You can swim.'"
I hope Chris gets the chance to watch this because he doesn't even know the level of impact he's had on me already. And what we're gonna do some amazing things over the next 10, 20 years together with the different brands that we end up acquiring and the teams we get to build and the lives we get to impact.
Love it. Scott Thompson, my friend, my buddy, my brother. Thanks for doing this. Loved hearing your story, and hopefully our audience can appreciate the life journey that you've been on. This is Live to Tell.
Thanks, bud.